All right, well, welcome to this video on hands-on number 6, homework number 6, making more decisions. And what we're going to get out of this is the opportunity to do a lot more nested if-else statements, and then we're going to compare that to a switch case statement to do the exact same thing and compare, contrast which one you like better for the task. Both particular methods are going to solve the problem in the same way, or slightly different syntax, but same solution to the problem, get the same output. But in this particular case, you get to choose whether you like the nested if-else statements or the switch statement. So moving on here. And these are difficult, hard choices. Okay, so we're going to practice nested if-else statements. I'm just going to say this. If you actually do this homework and walk through the flowchart, the pseudocode, and write the nested if-else statements, the concept of nested if-else statements cannot be foreign to you by the time you're done. You should have mastered them. Now, if this homework doesn't also make you appreciate the ease of using a switch statement, at least in terms of combining your conditional statements to give you exactly what you want out of a given set of scenarios, compared to a nested if-else, then I don't know if there's anything else I can convince you to believe me or not. So I'll leave it up to you to figure that out. And then, of course, you're going to post it online. So if you remember, this particular printer troubleshooter decision table was one that we used when we did our own hands-on drawing of flowcharts. What we're going to do is we're going to write a program that asks the user to choose from these three conditions. So the user selection part is going to be somewhere in the right here. They're going to have three choices. Whether the printer prints or not, whether there's a red light flashing, or whether the printer is recognized or not. Okay, now you have to be careful on the wording of the printer troubleshooting table and then how you program your logic to follow, or not even programming it, writing your pseudocode so that the logic flows. Notice it says here, printer does not print, yes. What it means is the condition of the printer is not printing is true in this particular table, depends on how you use it. Now, if you're not going to use it, if you're going to use printer does print is true, understand you're inverting these yeses here for this particular row. So the whole point of this, and this is one of the things I discussed in class, was you can't just see what's written down. You have to understand the context of what the requirements and the customer wants. So in this particular case, if we are going to evaluate true in this case, the true would be that the printer does not print. So hopefully that makes sense. So we have three conditions, and there are many different ways that you can choose from these three conditions. In the last homework, I used radio buttons. On this particular homework, just to show you that it can be done, we're using a select table, a drop-down menu that you've seen on many different web pages before. Is that the best way to do it? Not necessarily. Maybe radio buttons are better, but I don't care. We just want to show how to use it, and then you can maybe modify it in the future for a different program that you're using. Now, based upon these three conditions, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different results based upon these three different conditions, whether it's true or false, which makes sense because you have 2 to the 3, so you have three choices here. So you're going to have binary, yes or no, raised to the third power, 2 to the third equals 8. Take my word for it if you couldn't follow that. Now, out of the actions, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different possible actions, recommendations for you to troubleshoot the printer. What you don't see is this column right here has nothing, which means basically the printer's working. So we're going to have an inherent message in here that says everything's working, just ducky. Okay, so in that particular case, I'm going to add a message just to say, hey, based upon everything you've chosen, user, everything's fine. Don't know why you came to this page. So we're going to use this table, include it on a web page just for double checking our work and going forth from there. So this link right here is the starter for the program. I went ahead and already downloaded the HTML and the JavaScript that I gave you as a starter. Now you're going to have two challenges with this particular homework. One is to use nested if-else statements. The other one is use a switch statement. And the output has to match the matrix from the decision table and make sure your program logic works, which means you have to test each and every one of those 8 scenarios to make sure it's correct. Okay, so this is what your web page is going to look like. And notice in here, ask the question, does your printer print? And we'll have different drop-down menus for this. We have a button to actually activate our code. And then here is a text area box that is disabled, can't type in it. This is where your output message goes, and here is your guiding decision table. Okay, so I went ahead and provided you one possible flow chart for this, and if you look in the source slides on Harvey, you will see in the notes section, you'll see pseudocode that represents this. But basically what you have is you start the program and you're going to declare your variables. Now in this case, I have bool printing for Boolean printing, which is going to be a true or false, bool red light, bool recognized. What do these things mean? I have this documented in JavaScript code. For bool printing to be true in this case, based upon what I said earlier, it means that it is not printing. So it is true it's not printing. Then I go and see, is the red light flashing? Yes, it is. And then is it not recognized? In other words, is the printer unrecognized? If that answer is true, that'd be a yes. You go down and you display messages 3, 4, 5. So what I show here for message 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is this table right here, with message number 6 being everything's working just fine. And I'll show you how I did that. I'm providing you that in the code, but just want to understand what's going on. Now, based upon this, I am not going to cut and paste the pseudocode into the editor to go ahead and type this, because I want to move a little bit quicker on this video than having you watch me or listen to me smash on the keys on the keyboard. But understand what we're doing. Pause it if you need to. Go look at the source code file. And what this particular flowchart represents is the nested flow, or the nested if-else statements for starting at the table, whether it's true, you get a yes, 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 you get a yes, yes, no, you get a yes, no, yes, you get a yes, no, no. So that's the right-hand side of this particular thing. And again, if you go back over here, you got a yes, 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 no, yes, no, yes, and yes, no, no. So the right-hand side is basically the first 4 rules in this particular troubleshooter. So again, makes a lot more sense if you go through the flowchart yourself, look at the chart, follow through. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and go to the editor. And where are we? So what do I have in the editor right now? I have 2 files. One's called troubleshoot HTML and troubleshoot.javascript. Not going to spend a lot of time on the HTML. I just want to point out a couple of quick things. Let me pause this. Okay, so what we have here is all this stuff right here. These are all imported files to handle the Bootstrap select, which is what I'm using for the drop-down menus, and then the Bootstrap regular CSS stuff. You don't need to know this, it's just provided for you, so no big deal. And then, let me go ahead and get out of that real quick. What I want to show you is how I chose to do the particular HTML ID. So in this particular case, if you look right here, what I have is this select picker, which is the Bootstrap select stuff I've identified earlier. I've got 2 different IDs, one for dropdown that says yes, the printer does print, and no, the printer does not print. So in this particular case, not printing is true for the troubleshooting chart. Just remember, we're not doing this based upon how the English makes sense when you write it true or false, yes or no. What we're trying to do is match up our decision table to make the proper Boolean logic to get the answer we need. So in this particular case, I just came up with ID schema that makes sense. Yes, printing, not printing. And then down here, I have yes, red light for it is flashing, no, red light is not. And same thing down here, yes, recognized, no, recognized. I have a button called Troubleshoot. This little button right here, Troubleshoot, is going to be the thing we click on. And then finally, I have an ID for output. which is the thing that shows what our troubleshooting recommendations are based upon our logic. So hopefully that all makes sense, relatively easy. One thing I do want to point out again though, on line 60 right here, I have an image source, and what this means is that you need to put this image in the directory with your HTML and CSS, excuse me, JavaScript. Otherwise, when your web page loads, it's not going to be there. I want it to be there. You want it to be there. So make sure you put that file in there. Now, going to the JavaScript, I have some comments in here and code to get you started. The typical $sign function that says, hey, go to the DOM, look for the element by whatever ID I enter. So this is our shortcut thing. You will get used to it. If you don't, I can't imagine you not getting used to it. Now, what I do in on the bottom on Windows Onload, it basically says when someone clicks on the troubleshoot button, go to this fix printer function, which is right up here. Now, the fix printer function is our main program for this particular homework. And what I start out with is I declare this thing called string output, which is initially blank. And I've done this before in some other homeworks, but what I'm doing is, even though I have these 6 different messages defined on lines 9 through 14 here, what I'm going to do is add those messages as required to the output, so that when I push this to the DOM later, I just have to push string output to the DOM instead of coming up with a complicated changing, you know, $sign output dot value equals blah blah blah. I'm just going to go $sign output dot value equals string output, and then I move on with my life. You can also use that for alerts and stuff like that. Now, coming down here, I've declared my 6 messages, and you can see what they are. Then I wrote a comment block in here that pretty much hits on what I've said a couple of times already. You need to be careful here when you define our Boolean variables for use in the troubleshooting chart as to what to define as true or false. For example, if the chart used in this problem, a combination of yes, 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 results in messages 2, 3, and 4 being provided to the user. In this case, yes, yes, yes means the printer does not print, and a red light is flashing, and the printer is unrecognized. So, how do we make that logic actually happen? Well, our Boolean for printing, our Boolean variable for printing, is going to say if not printing is true, is selected as true, then we have a yes up here. For red light, if the red light is flashing, then that's going to be a yes. And then if it's recognized, not recognized, selected, that's also going to be a true. So this returns a value. So line 22, bool printing equals $sign not printing selected, returns a value of true only when the not printing HTML ID is selected. So if anything else is selected, which means nothing, or yes printing, then bool printing is going to be false. So hopefully you understand that. Boolean variables only have values of true and false. And remember, all lowercase, not in parentheses. I'm not in quotation marks. Okay, so we define our printing, red light, and recognized in here, and then we have to enter our code right down here. Now, I'm going to do 2 things. First, I'm going to do this program. I'm going to write out the nested if-else statement, and then I'm going to say, okay, what if I don't choose either of those options? We need to basically correct the user. They have to select something for whether it's printing, whether there's a red light flashing, or it's recognized. So first I'm going to do the nested logic, and then I'm going to do the validation. And hopefully you'll be able to understand it, and we can move on from there. So I am not going to bounce back and forth to the flowchart, so you're going to have to follow, look at the, like print out the flowchart, maybe look at the pseudocode. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going through the logic of, in particular, this yes, yes, yes. I'm going to start out with there because, well, okay, I said I wasn't going to do it, but I will. This part right here, if we zoom in a little bit, sorry. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a nested if-else statement that starts with the yeses for printer does not print, and then my else is going to be no's, and the nesting part is whether the red light's flashing or the printer is recognized. So that's what I'm going to replicate in my code. I'm not going to bounce back and forth anymore. I just want to start writing. So let me go ahead and get rid of that. And I'm going to go if bool printing equals true. Now, as I discussed in a previous video, what I can do is just go if bool printing, and that will treat it on basically evaluate if it's true. I won't need the triple equal sign for the equivalency, and if it's false, I won't need the equal false. But I am purposely putting in this conditional statement of 3 equal signs and true to force the value has to be, printing has to be the Boolean value of true, which it will be depending on if it's yes selected or not. So again, as I discussed in the previous video, there's a couple of different ways programmers do it. In our class, we are going to put the 3 equal signs and either true or false, because we want our program to be explicit and clear, no confusion, and the program will work the way we want it to. So we are doing nested if-else statements. If our printer is not printing, the next thing we have to check is, okay, if our red light is flashing, true, and if our printer is not recognized, and what are we going to do? So you'll see the nesting right here. It automatically does it with the browser. It's indenting. I've got the nesting. So right now I have an if-else statement nested inside an if-else statement nested inside an if statement. Excuse me. And what do we get in this particular case if we have true in all of those? Well, we're going to go string output equals, and in this particular case, it's going to be string message 2. I'm going to concatenate that with this funky \n in quotation marks, which, if you remember, is an escape character for a new line, followed by string message 3, concatenated again with that \n, and concatenated one more time, string message 4. If you go ahead and look at your chart, you'll see that if there's 3 yeses, the 3 messages that you're supposed to get are message 2, which is check the printer computer cable, message 3, which is ensure the printer software is installed, and message 4, which is check/replace the egg. Okay, now in this particular case, the next thing we're going to look at is, okay, so we have yes, we have yes, yes, yes. In this particular case, we look at the inner if and we go, okay, if it's not true for recognized, we're going to go else. We don't have to do an if because we know there can only be 2 values. String output equals what? So we go back to the chart, we look for the yes, yes, no, and we're going to find out we need messages 4 and 5. So it's going to be string message 4 concatenated with string message 5. Okay, so what we have here is, and let me go ahead and save this real quick, is I now have on my flowchart, even though I said I wasn't going to do this, darn it, I'll do it. I'll come over here, I have the first 2 columns. I have printer doesn't print, the red light is flashing, and printer's unrecognized. Then by adding the bottom column here, the else, I end up keeping my yes, yes, and I add a no option. Okay, so now if you look to see where the different curly braces are, I'm now getting back to assuming I'm not printing. I've already evaluated my red light is flashing. What if it isn't? Well, I'm going to go else. Oops, sorry, typo. So in this case, do I need to put if bool red light equals false? No, because we're using nested if else with Boolean values. It can only be false if it's not true. Although I'm going to get to that in a second on how we're going to make sure that something was chosen. That's a little bit later. Else, if, and I'm going to cheat here a little bit. I'm going to copy this stuff right here. And I'm going to paste it in and explain what I'm going to do here in a second. But in this particular case, the first three are true, true, true. Then I have true, true. The else here is false. Then I have true. I automatically have false because I wasn't true here. And now I'm evaluating either true or false for Boolean recognized. And if I look at the true, false, true on the chart, I'm going to end up with, I need messages 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. And I'm sorry if you can't follow just by the words. That's why you need to have the chart next to you. The flow chart as well as the printer troubleshooting chart will really help out a lot. Visually, it's easier to do it. Else, you're going to end up with, at this point, a true, a false, and a false. So a yes, no, no, and in which case you only need message 5. Okay. Now, I know that what I'm saying here doesn't seem to make clear, coherent sense, but if you follow the nested if-else statements down, when I say true, 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 that one's easy. Then I go true, I come down here, I've got a false, and then I either have a true or a false afterwards. Reading a nested if-else statement, you need some context behind it, so it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Keep this in mind because when we do the switch case statements, it's going to look like it's a little more work, but it's going to be so much clearer in exactly what conditions are met to get a different output for your troubleshooting tips. So at this point, believe it or not, oops, I messed up. I'm supposed to have a bracket there. Sorry about that. Like that, okay. Now, at this point, we have all of the yeses, and now I need to go into the no's for whether the thing is not printing, in which case if it's no for not printing, it means it's printing. So we're going to do an else, which means now our bool printing equals false. And let's go ahead and we're going to copy, just to be lazy, I'm going to copy everything here, and I just have to be careful that I use the right values. So if at this point my bool printing is false because I'm in the else. If the red light is true, is flashing, and it is not recognized, so I'm going to go no, yes, yes. I need messages 3 and 4. So I'm going to get rid of message 2, message 3 and 4. Okay. Otherwise, I have false because I'm down in this else. I have a true and then a false. So a no, yes, no is just message 4. Okay, and then finally I have a false at this point, and now I have another false for red light because it's in the if underneath this. If this is confusing, that's okay. Follow the chart, it makes sense, and again, you'll appreciate the switch statement that much more. For false, false, true, that's a no, no, yes, I just have message 3. Again, I'm just looking at the chart to make sure I got the right message. Else, I'm going to have message 6, and message 6 basically says I have, because I'm down here, I have guaranteed I am printing, bool printing equals false. I'm in the else, which means that my red light is not flashing, and I'm in the else, which means that my computer is recognized. So if I am printing, my light's not flashing, and it is recognized, message 6 means everything's just hunky-dory. Now the last thing we're going to do is, our flowchart and our pseudocode, is we're going to push string output back to the DOM. So let me save this real quick. I'm going to use my handy dandy $sign. I'm going to go output, which is the HTML ID. I'm going to set the value equal to string output. And there you go. Now I want to save this and come up here and look at my errors, and it says there's no syntax errors. So take a quick look at my program, go over to my HTML, and I'm going to do Firefox, remember this, and preview. And our program comes up, and if we look at this right now, we can come up here, we have our chart. So let's just do yes, yes, yes in this case. Yes meaning printer does not print. Go to the drop-down, printer, oh, we don't want that. Printer does not print. We want a red light is flashing, and printer is unrecognized for this first column. Printer is not recognized, hit the troubleshoot button, and magically we get message 2, 3, and 4. Check the printer cable, ensure the printer software is installed in the ink, and that's awesome. Okay, so that's great, that's wonderful, it works fine, and we could do one more thing. So we can leave it like this. Let's go yes, no, no. So in this case, not flashing, and it is recognized, hit troubleshoot. Yes, no, no, comes down, it's check for paper jam, check for paper jam. Amazingly, our program seemed to work the first time we wrote it, which normally doesn't happen when I'm typing fast during these videos. So, amazingly that worked. Okay, now, let's go back to our program and deal with something that maybe we're not ready for. So let's come back here, and I want to go ahead and launch it one more time. Now I have does your printer print, I have please choose one to force the user to choose, and let's say I go like this. The printer does print, so I got a no, and the red light is flashing, but I don't choose something there for does it recognize a printer. I click troubleshoot and it gives me an answer. That's not on my chart. My chart says no because it does print. It should be one of these 4. The red light is flashing, so it's got to be in somewhere in these 2 right here. But then this third one, I have neither a yes or a no, and that's a problem. So I need to fix that. What I need to do is basically say, hey, if neither of these is chosen, I have to have at least one of these chosen, and at least one of these chosen, and at least one of these chosen. And if that's not true, then I need to tell the user, you've got a problem, please choose one. And if it is true that there's one chosen from each of these, then we execute the code we just wrote. So we come back here, go back to our troubleshoot JavaScript. And what I'm going to do, just to make my life a little bit easier, is, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to collapse this. Oops, sorry about that. Let me go back one. I'm going to go ahead and copy the whole thing and tab it over. Now, what the editor allows me to do, I'm going to save it real quick, is with this little arrow right here, allows you to collapse the whole if statement down, and that's useful for kind of what I'm just about to do right now. So I'm going to write a new if statement, and on this if statement I'm not going to be using these bools. I have to use this $sign thing to see whether stuff is selected. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go starting with my bool printing. So if my $sign, sorry, not underscore printing dot selected one second, I just gotta stop this for a second. Okay, and I'm back, sorry. So what I'm going to do is I have to ask the question, if neither my not printing ID or my yes printing ID are chosen, if both of those are not selected, so I have equals 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 false and $sign yes printing. Why did I not get that? There we go. Dot selected equals 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 false. If that is true, and so what this statement at this point, I'm going to return here. If I don't have the not printing selected and I don't have the yes sign printed selected, it means I don't have either of the two things I need to be selected. So that's bad. If I have that, I need to give an error message. But it's not just for that. I also have to do that for my no red light, yes red light, and not recognize and yes recognize. So I'm going to put ORs in here, and I'm going to kind of copy this right here and paste it. So I'm going to go no red light selected, and yes red light selected, and finally go to the not recognized and the yes recognized, and then we're going to fix up the end of it. Now I apologize because when I copied the chart, I think that chart is actually British English, so they use a S instead of a Z, so I keep making typos with the S's versus the Z's as I'm doing this problem. Anyway, here's where we go. So in this particular case, what lines 26 through 28 say are if I have not selected either not printing or yes printing, or I have not selected one of these two, no red light, yes red light, or I have not selected any of these. So in this particular case, if I didn't select any of them, I would get an automatic error because none of the three compound conditional end statements are being met. And if I did select two out of the three, my OR in this particular case gets me to a false, and then I have a problem. Okay, so if I have not selected all three of them, what are we going to do? What we're going to do is, sorry, let me just put a little space in here, make it easier to see. We are going to go, let's do an alert, a little pop-up to say something along the lines of, sorry, you need to answer all three questions to continue. Something like that. And then what we'll do is we'll go string output, and we'll do the same exact thing. Please answer all three of the above questions to continue. God dang it. And there you go. Okay, now, so what happens is this first part of it says if I didn't select one answer for all three questions, I get an alert pop-up. I push something to the output box, and then it ends. Else, what am I going to do? I'm going to do the rest of my program, which I had already written. So just to prove that everything is still good, I'm going to come over here, hit my button, and notice what I have now. I have my first part of my if statement is right here. So if this happens, it'll end the program. Otherwise, it means I did choose one from each category, and then I do my whole program. Okay, so go ahead and save this. Go back to my troubleshoot HTML, launch it, and let's see if we did this right. So we hit it, and we go, oh, we didn't choose anything. We get sorry, you need to answer all three, so let's choose that one. Do it again. Yep, made that mistake. Okay, one more time. Okay, and then not recognized. Okay, we get printer installed. So there you go. That is the complete program using the nested if-else statements. So go back to my editor. Everything looks good. In our second part, this is our first challenge. In our second challenge, we're not changing anything on the HTML. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the JavaScript, and we're just going to focus in on this part right here, and we're going to replace it with a switch case statement. So give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, so now just to make my life a little bit easier, I know you don't care about that, but I'm going to actually create a new troubleshoot HTML. I'm going to call it troubleshoot1.html. Go ahead and save that. And I'm going to take this troubleshoot JavaScript and change that to troubleshoot1 JavaScript. By the way, you're going to have to do something like this too, so don't complain. Okay, so why did I do that? Well, why I did that is because I have to come up here, I have to go to my HTML, change my JavaScript file name, save it, and then go to my troubleshoot JavaScript, and what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of everything in the else here. So we're going to get rid of this nested if-else statement, that tree that we saw, that we created, and it's going to be blank. And now we have everything else in our program is good with the exception of the output, because none of the output is there. So instead of else, and I will fix the spacing on this in a second, we're going to go like this. We're going to go switch. That's how we start our switch statement, and we're going to use the word true, which means when any of our cases are true, we execute. Well, like any of our cases, when the case is true that we come across for the conditional statements we use, then we will go ahead and execute the commands associated with that. So we start out and we go case, and what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the chart and we're going to look at that yes, 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 no, yes, no, yes. And here's where we get to see it looks like a little bit more typing, but in the end, more characters is actually clearer to read. So in this particular case, I'm going to go bool printing equals true, and bool red light equals true, and bool recognized equals true. And then you get a colon right there. Look how easy that was to write the first 3 lines of the nested if else. We did it all on one line. Now we can go to the chart, and yeah, I know I said I wasn't going to do this. We go to this chart, and what we just did was create the logic for this first column, yes, 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 right here in our code. Now, what do we do then? We come and actually, let me save this. I'm going to open up that file to make my life a little easier. Where's that troubleshoot? HTML and JavaScript. Go ahead and open those. And what I'm going to do is, that's my first one right there. Copy that. Come over and I'm going to paste it. So in this particular case, if all 3 are true, for I don't print, I do have a red light flashing, and I'm not recognized, I'm going to print messages 2, 3, and 4. And for every case statement, unless you are specifically requesting fall through, which we are not doing in this program, we have to put a break. Not putting a break is a major mistake that you will make over and over again. Now, the great thing about this is now we can just go from left to right on our rules, and let's go ahead and actually let's just copy this right here, make our lives a little easier. Copy it and paste it. Okay, so now I have a true, true, and let's go false over here. And for true, true, false, we are going to end up with just messages 4 and 5. So come over here, we go 4, and we go 5, and delete. Okay, and we just keep doing it, folks. We go true, false, true, and that's how the table goes. For true, false, true, we have messages 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Oops. Now we have true, false, false. So let's go true, false, false. I look at my table, and what do I have for true, false, false? Just message number 5. For my output, delete the rest. So if I stop right here, go ahead and save it. What have I done? I've done the first 4 conditions in the decision table, where I have a true for printing, and then I have either true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. This is so much easier for me to read and know exactly what my output is going to be based upon the decision table. So if else are great when you have 2, maybe 3 things you're going to have to answer, but 2, it's definitely best. You don't want to write a switch case statement for 2 cases. but when you have compound conditional statements, multiple conditions that you're evaluating, switch statement makes your life a whole lot easier. Now we're going to go to the next 4, which is false, true, true. And false, true, true is going to be messages number 3 and 4. And hopefully you're catching the hint on this. Makes our life a little easier. The next one is false, true, false. And false, true, false is just message 4. Again, I'm not doing this from memory because I have the chart printed out in front of me. Makes my life easier. And I have false, false, true, false, false, true gives me just message 3. And the last thing is going to be our condition of false, false, false. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. One is you can go like this and change everything to false, 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 or knowing that you have covered the I've had to choose false or true for all 3 of our categories because we took care of it up here on lines 26 through 31, you can use the default category. And the default case in this particular case will be string output equals string message number 6. Now, you don't need to do this. There does not, a switch statement does not require a default. And the default basically just means that you evaluated all the different cases, and since it wasn't one of these cases, I'm going to use something like this. This is actually really convenient when you're doing like a grade type of program or something like that, where you've got your 90 to 100, blah, 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 and then on your last one, if it's not 60 to 70, the default will be you failed the class or something like that. You get an F. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and take a look at my errors. I don't have any. What I do want to do, however, is I do want to bring the switch statement up here like this. And the reason I want to do this is because of good JavaScript standards per Google and other organizations that write a lot of code. JavaScript has this feature that I haven't talked about yet, but I will in class, where it applies semicolons where it thinks it's needed if there's not one there, and that can cause problems. It didn't cause a problem in this particular case, but we're going to follow good standing conventions. Go ahead and save it. And now if we look at this, we go, I think we've got everything we need. Now I didn't comment this part right here, but that's okay. It's up to you for both programs. I'm going to go to my Troubleshoot 1 and I'm going to preview it in Firefox. Go ahead and preview it. Now it comes up, please choose. Hey, we didn't choose it, so let's go ahead and choose one. Does not print, is flashing, and is not recognized. Hit Troubleshoot. We should get check the printer cable, printer software is installed, replace the ink, so we got that right. And if we go to yes, yes, no, yes, yes, no, we should have 4 and 5. Okay, so you can run through it. You see that we did our program correctly. Now the last thing I want to do is just take a quick look at how the code looks between the two. So if we go to our original if-else nested statement, we have this right here. Does the job. If you take your time and go through it, you can see where it's a true, 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 and then a true, false, true, false, true, and a true, false, false. You just have to follow through the nested if-else statement and figure it out. Go to the switch case statement, and you go true, 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 false. There's absolutely no question on what these individual cases are representing in the code. It's completely up to you how you do this, unless I specifically ask you to write a switch statement. But I'll be honest with you, you should use switch statements when you have more than two choices to make. Now, if you look up here on this particular part where we're validating the user properly selected the things, I used an if-else statement and then I nested the switch statement inside of it. That's perfectly fine because I have two choices. Either they didn't select everything I needed or they did, and if they did, execute that line of code. Okay, there you go. I know that was a long video, but I wanted to make sure that I covered everything I needed to in this particular program. If you have any questions, please let me know, but the solution's right here. Get a hold of me, write down specific questions, areas you're confused about, and then we'll cover them again in class or we can meet individually. Without further ado, aloha.